Welcome to chapter 4, part 3, probably the biggest chapter. So we're getting to the end of this one. It's so important. This is the section called Putting It All Together. So this, you might want to have your handout at the ready because you've got all this space to make some notes as we're going to talk through these 4 sections of consent and putting it all together. And this is the part where we're going to take all of the concepts and we're going to meld them into these sort of 4 big domains to think about when we think about consent. Also, of course, don't forget your question and log sheet in case, as usual, as we're going on, if you have anything you want to note or come back to jot that down there as well. So for the putting it all together part, we're starting out, like I said, with these 4 categories. The first one is around what's the legal side of consent. So these are questions you want to ask yourself before you even think about should consent be on the table at all between 2 people. So if you remember the legal consent, we want to have, it needs to be all those sort of elements of, as age appropriate. Are there any power imbalance? Is this an authority figure? Of course, is this a family member? Not okay. Is this someone who has the capacity to give that consent? So these are all elements of that capacity to consent. So no one's intoxicated. Everyone has the cognitive ability to say their true and honest abilities. So checking out that entire capacity to consent, because if that's not there, it really doesn't matter what happens next. Nothing else from that point on matters. It wasn't okay if the legal aspects aren't there to begin with. Then we're checking out that we have all those elements of hot spice. So honest, are we being honest with ourselves? Is our partner being honest with us? Is it ongoing? Are we making sure that each new stage and each new step is an ongoing conversation about consent? What's okay, what's not okay? Is it talked about? Are we making sure we use our language, our words, and our body language together? Is it specific? Do we know the who, what, when, why, where, and how of what's going on and what we're both agreeing to? Is it present moment? Present moment, is it not something that we talked about last week, but are we reaffirming that we have consent right now, this exact second, with this person in specific? Is it informed? Have we disclosed anything that's important, that any risks that we have? Has our partner done the same with us? Do we have the right age with each other? Do we have the right relationship status? All of those informed consent pieces. Do we know what birth control or contraceptive, which we'll talk about next chapter more? Do we know all that stuff? Is it changeable? Does each person have and know that they can revoke that consent at any time? And is that being respected if new signals arise? And E for enthusiastic. Is this an enthusiastic, engaged response showing everyone that we're both on this top floor of the survival house, that everyone really does truly want to be there and doing this thing together? Once we have all that stuff, then we can start to look at these other 3 elements. These 3 elements are emotional safety, social safety, and physical safety. And as we learned, safety is what keeps us in that top floor where consent should happen, not in those other floors where consent and sexual intimacy stuff should not be happening. Emotional safety is around the ideas we've talked about of no pressure, so not feeling coerced or asked more than once or those types of things, and not trapped emotionally. So sometimes, again, if we haven't addressed those boundaries and rejection, our own ways of dealing with that, we don't want to accidentally make a partner feel emotionally trapped. That, the whole, if you loved me, you would do this thing with me kind of feeling. We don't want to have any pressure on the relationship status that if we don't do this thing together, I'm going to break up with you or I'm going to stop hanging out with you. Those can be emotionally trapped situations that can make a person start to fall from their top floor into the second floor of that house, where now they're doing the freeze, appease, tend, befriend, fight, flight responses, which aren't true consent and can lead to real damage between people. So no coercion, no guilt, no blame, no shame, for, oh, like, why wouldn't you want to do that? Like, this is what all the people are doing. So some of those myths and influences, cultural, or societal pressures, can start to sneak in here of like, well, all our friends are doing this, maybe we should too, or we're a certain age, we should X, Y, Z. Any of those sort of emotional pressures on a person, that within the relationship itself aren't okay. We want to make sure we're steering clear of those pressures. This leads into, of course, the next element, which is the social safety. So social safety builds on that. So social safety is, again, looking for those external pressures. Is there an assumption that you're supposed to do something, or do you feel like there's an assumption you're supposed to? We want to also look for, I know legally that we know those authority power relationships from the first element, teacher, student, coach, player, boss, employee, minister, congregation member. All of those ones we've explored aren't okay. But there can be small and still meaningful power imbalances between peers that we sometimes want to watch out for. So just checking, does the person you're approaching or that's approaching you, is there a power imbalance there? Does this person rely on you for rides to school in a carpool? Is there any type of sort of reliance on, you're working on a project together for school, that if there's something that happens between you that could impact someone's sort of marks or ability to get into a certain school, different kind of power imbalances that could be happening socially. Is someone very much more considered, in a different sort of popularity status than someone else? Again, these are constructs in our society, but they can still have real impressions on us and our social safety to be honest about what we really want or don't want. If we feel like someone is like super cool, if we were to say no to them, what repercussions would that have, or vice versa? So making sure that we're really telling our partner we want them to be truthful and honest, encouraging those conversations about consent. Please tell me how you're really feeling. It's really important to me that you're comfortable, those types of things. Watching those myths and facts. Again, these are the rules. You have to do them. This is what guys do. This is what girls do. This is what I've seen on TV or in movies, therefore I'm supposed to. So making sure you've been able to separate those out for the social safety. Now, the last one is around physical safety. Now, this one talks a lot about that sort of second floor of that survival house again. Those triggers can be around feeling trapped, helpless, remember, rejected, without consciousness about how we're doing that, abandoned, and out of control. When we have those 5 triggers, we can sometimes go into that second floor, that sort of middle floor of the house, that yellow light or the red light, not okay responses. We might not always know why, but it's important to think about. So physically, this can happen in terms of a trapped response. So even if our partners feel really comfortable and we've determined all these other stages are good and consent's rolling and everyone's on the same page, physically, a lot of times sexual intimacy happens in closed spaces, alone, away from everyone else, often with locked doors, things like that. And sometimes people can have reactions that they weren't expecting. And we just want to make sure we're checking in with a partner. Are we in a car with someone very far away from their ability to leave or get home? Has a person come to our house? Do they not know how to get home? Are we their drive home? If they feel like they upset us and now we're not going to let them leave the house or we're not going to drive them home, those can be elements that influence a person's ability to be truthful and honest with us around consent. Have we sort of isolated someone away from their friend group, even inadvertently, that now they feel anxious and they don't know how to reach out for help, or they don't know how to get help if they need it? Physically, are we much larger and stronger than another person, or is someone much larger and stronger than us that could make us feel in a moment of not feeling sure or safe that we don't know how to express or protect ourselves. So making sure our physical presence isn't overwhelming for a person in a sexual interaction. Another thing here too is also experience level. Sometimes someone who has had a lot of sexual experience can feel intimidating to someone who hasn't, like they have to prove something or show how good they are. So again, those communications, taking inventory of where you are yourself on these things and where another person might be. So ways you can help with this is creating slowdown spots around physical safety. So if you're actually now in a position, in a physical space with someone, oftentimes bodies get close to each other. Somebody's taking a moment to pull back for a minute and like look at the person and talk for a second and see if they still look and sound, even if you're not changing what you're doing, you're checking that ongoing consent, to making sure as you remove a physical presence for a moment that the person is still looking comfortable and into you being there, and vice versa. Letting your partner know, of course, how they, that they should have a plan on how to get home. They should feel comfortable with how to get home. Let them know that if there's anything that's making them nervous, that you want them to tell you. Lots of different ways to kind of cope with the feeling of physical safety, to make sure that you have all of those pieces in a way from legal, emotional, social, and physical, including all of these other pieces we've talked about so far around consent coming together, where everyone feels like they can honestly, truly communicate and be clear about what they want and what they don't want. So this looks like small, reciprocal, kind of back and forth interactions. So again, using that top floor of the house, this is our facial features, our voice, our give and take of communication. So if we are with someone we feel safe with, this should happen pretty organically, right? Someone makes a joke, the other person laughs. Someone, does something flirty, the other person responds in a similar way. And so long as everyone's sort of flowing, those are good signs that we're all up on the top floor. Slow progression, right? We're not jumping from, touching someone on the arm to suddenly reaching down to their pants. That's alarming for many people, especially a new partner you've never done anything before with. That's, not giving a person a chance to check in and think about how they feel. Even if you've asked permission and they've said yes, again, it's still not giving both of you a chance to always be sure about your responses and your sense of comfort with each other, that other pieces of intimacy and closeness can help you get there. So the book itself, again, has even more specific examples and more specific direction if you're looking for more step-by-step sort of breakdown. But this is a really good starting place. You can make your notes on here, as we talked about, and putting it all together. Those are your main pieces. From here, we're going into Chapter 5. And Chapter 5, we're going to look at some other extra things that kind of add on from here. So things like growing with consent as you're in longer-term relationships. Things like alcohol and drugs, how does that play in? What about contraceptives? What does that look like and mean? How does it integrate into consent? And I'll see you right around the corner. Chapter 5, this wraps up your Chapter 4. Awesome job, huge pieces in this chapter. Really awesome work. We'll talk to you soon.